Hash the wedding date. The grand ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers. Soft music drifted through the air. Emma stood near the entrance, her heart pounding in her chest. She wore a deep blue gown that swept the floor as she walked. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, pinned back with delicate clips. She looked beautiful, but she felt terrified. This was her ex-boyfriend's wedding, and she had come alone. Emma had tried everything to avoid this day. She had made excuses. She had pretended to be sick. She had even considered leaving town for the weekend. But her family had insisted she attend. After all, their families had been friends for years. It would look strange if she didn't come. So here she was, standing in the doorway of the most elegant venue in the city, watching her past walk down the aisle with someone else. The ceremony had been painful, but the reception would be worse. She would have to smile. She would have to make conversation. She would have to pretend that her heart wasn't breaking all over again. Emma took a deep breath and stepped inside. The ballroom was filled with round tables covered in white linens. Golden chairs surrounded each table. Flowers bloomed from every centerpiece. Everything was perfect. Everything except her situation. She found her assigned seat near the middle of the room. She sat down carefully, smoothing her gown. She watched as couples filled the other chairs. Everyone had someone. Everyone except her. This is going to be a long night, she whispered to herself. Then she saw him. He sat at the next table over. He was tall, even while sitting. He had dark hair styled back from his face. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo. His jaw was strong. His expression was calm, but there was something in his eyes. Something that suggested he didn't want to be here either. Emma recognized him immediately. Everyone in the city knew Alexander Chase. He was the CEO of Chase Industries. He was young, successful, and incredibly wealthy. He had been featured in magazines. He had been interviewed on television. He was the kind of man who seemed untouchable, unreachable, and yet, here he sat, looking just as uncomfortable as she felt. Their eyes met across the space between tables. For a moment, neither looked away. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. She quickly glanced down at her hands. What was Alexander Chase doing at this wedding? How did he know her ex? Before she could think too much about it, the bride and groom made their entrance. The room erupted in applause. Emma clapped politely, her smile tight. She watched as they took their seats at the head table. She watched as they kissed. She watched as everyone celebrated their love. She felt more alone than ever. The first course arrived. Emma picked at her food. She sipped her champagne slowly. She tried to focus on anything except the happy couple. But everywhere she looked, there were reminders. Photos from their engagement, stories shared by the best man, laughter and joy filling every corner of the room. She excused herself from the table. She needed air. She needed space. She walked toward the edge of the ballroom, near the tall windows that overlooked the city. She pressed her hand against the cool glass. Escaping too, Emma turned. Alexander Chase stood beside her. Up close, he was even more striking. His dark eyes studied her with quiet intensity. He held a glass of whiskey in one hand. I needed a moment, Emma admitted softly. I understand, he said. These events can be overwhelming. She nodded. For a few seconds, they stood in comfortable silence. Then Emma made a decision. It was impulsive. It was desperate. But she was tired of feeling invisible. Can I ask you something? She said, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander turned to face her fully. Of course. Emma took a breath. Can you pretend to be my date? Just for tonight. Just for a few hours. She saw surprise flicker across his face. But he didn't laugh. He didn't walk away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, considering. May I ask why? He said gently. Emma looked back at the reception. That's my ex-boyfriend getting married. Everyone keeps asking me if I'm seeing anyone. Everyone keeps giving me these pitying looks. I just want to get through this night without feeling like a failure. Her voice cracked on the last word. She hated how vulnerable she sounded. But there was no taking it back now. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he set down his glass on a nearby table. He extended his hand to her. Then let's make this night easier for you, he said simply. Emma stared at his hand. She couldn't believe he was agreeing. She couldn't believe this was happening. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His fingers were warm. His grip was steady. They walked back to the tables together. But instead of separating, Alexander pulled out the chair beside Emma at her table. He sat down as if he had been there all along. He introduced himself to the other guests with easy confidence. He placed his hand over Emma's on the table. The gesture was subtle, but everyone noticed. Emma saw the change immediately. The pitying glances stopped. The awkward questions disappeared. Instead, people looked at her with curiosity. With interest. Who was this handsome man at her side? "You're doing great," Alexander murmured near her ear. "Just relax." And somehow, Emma did. As the evening continued, she found herself laughing at his quiet observations. She found herself leaning into his presence. When they were asked to dance, Alexander led her onto the floor with practiced ease. He held her carefully, respectfully. But there was warmth there too. A connection she hadn't expected. "Why are you really here?" Emma asked as they swayed to the music. "At this wedding, I mean. You don't seem to know many people." Alexander smiled slightly. "The groom's father invested in my first company years ago. I owed him the courtesy of attending. But you're right, I'd rather be anywhere else." "Then why help me?" Emma pressed. "You don't even know me." His dark eyes met hers. "Because you had the courage to ask. Because you looked like you needed someone in your corner. And because I know what it feels like to face something difficult alone." Emma's throat tightened. She had expected many things tonight. But not this. Not genuine kindness from a stranger. Not understanding from someone who seemed to have everything. As the song ended, Alexander didn't immediately let go. He looked at her thoughtfully. "This may be forward," he said carefully. "But I'd like to see you again. Not as a pretend date. As a real one." Emma's heart skipped. "Are you serious?" "Completely," he said. "I came to this wedding expecting to fulfill an obligation and leave. Instead, I met someone interesting. Someone brave. I'd be a fool not to pursue that." Emma smiled. It was the first real smile she'd worn all night. "I'd like that." They exchanged numbers before the night ended. As Emma drove home later, she realized something. She had gone to that wedding dreading every moment. She had gone expecting pain and embarrassment. Instead, she had found possibility. She had found hope. Sometimes the worst nights led to the best beginnings. Sometimes asking for help opened unexpected doors. And sometimes, pretending could lead to something wonderfully real. Emma looked at Alexander's contact information on her phone. Tomorrow, she would text him. Tomorrow, their story would truly begin. But tonight, she simply felt grateful. Grateful that she had been brave. Grateful that he had said yes.